Welcome to Reverse Mortgage Radio, hosted by Legend's very own reverse mortgage professor, Bruce Simmons. You have so many options with a reverse mortgage, everyone has a different opinion, and the government keeps changing the rules. You need to hear from the first certified reverse mortgage professional in Colorado to specialize exclusively in reverse mortgages, one of few in the state with the letter CRMP after his name. Bruce has the specific training and education you need to understand what you're buying. Now, here's your host, Bruce Simmons.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. We've got a very special guest again. If you were here last week, you heard Brady Mullen talking about some basics of reverse mortgages and why he looks at them as he does as far as the importance of factoring it into a financial plan. And so, Brady, thank you so much for joining me again today. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
For those that weren't here last week, can you give us a quick synopsis of your background, who you are, why people should listen to you?
I don't know if this is why people should listen to me, but my background, my degree's in accounting, and I spent 19 years as a financial advisor, an independent financial advisor. So I built up a book of business. I wanted to start adding real estate advice to what I offered my clients, and that became a compliance issue. The E&O doesn't cover it. The compliance attorneys had a hard time determining whether certain recommendations were suitable or not. And I fought that battle for a long time because I wanted to add that to my practice. And ultimately, there was so much friction involved with that, and so many things that I couldn't say, or so many rules around what I couldn't say, that I ultimately sold my practice, and now I work strictly in real estate. And the reason I got so passionate about that is I recognize, and most people hearing this will resonate. This will resonate with them, which is that the real estate choices that we all have to make as adults have a massive financial impact, and the financial world just generally doesn't talk about it much.
Yeah.
They'll give it some lip service, and they'll talk about it superficially, but really digging in and underwriting decisions and guiding people on decisions, how different real estate choices will affect their finances, is just not common out there, and that's why it's a compliance issue. So I sold my practice because I really wanted to add that. I thought I could help people, frankly. I mean, that was a good industry for me and my family and my career, but I felt like I could make a difference by helping illustrate the financial impact of real estate choices that people make, whether it's buying versus renting, owning versus renting, or upsizing or downsizing or refinancing, or reverse mortgages is a common one. Investing in real estate. I wanted to speak freely about those things and give a financial add some financial color to those conversations, and oddly, I couldn't do that as a financial advisor. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, and now you teach continuing education to professionals, whether it's both in the real estate business and the financial business.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, so I teach courses to realtors to how to talk about the financial element of different things that they're helping clients with. Mm-hmm. And I also teach a couple of CE courses to certified financial planners about how reverse mortgages work and how to integrate that with an overall planning perspective.
That's great. That's what I want to talk about today, those two main things. Well, the real estate for real estate professionals, I should say, the purchase program with reverse mortgages. What are some of the pros and cons of that? But mostly, I want to start with the financial planning aspect, because this is something that is completely underused. And I think you bring a fresh perspective to it. I've talked about it a little bit on the show, but with your background, you obviously can speak to it a little in more detail.
Yeah, I mean, where do you want to start? Because it kind of depends on what people are using it for. I'm a big proponent of this book. I'm not necessarily recommending everybody read it because it's pretty dense financially, but you know the book I'm talking about. It's Wade Pfau wrote it. He's the head of research at the American College of Financial Planning. They're the ones that create the education curriculum for CFPs to become financial planners. And he's written a bunch of books on how to build financial plans to keep your clients, to protect them from running out of money. Essentially, that's what financial planners do. And he wrote a book about reverse mortgages, and I love that because it's the only book about reverse mortgages that I know of that wasn't written by somebody who sells reverse mortgages. He has no dog in the fight. Mm-hmm. But he makes some very good points in that book about, hey, financial advisors are being are being handcuffed on how they can talk about real estate with the public, and that's a tragedy because real estate represents about 2/3 of the wealth in the country. That's a pretty dramatic oversight. And it's not like financial planners don't want to talk about it. It's just that the rules and regulations don't allow them to. And that's starting to flex a little bit, I've noticed, which is a good thing. And Wade Pfau, by the way, is no small part in making that happen. He's a big name in the financial planning industry. So, I tip my hat to him about that. But one of the main points that he makes in that book is, financial planners, if you're dealing with someone that looks like they're going to run out of money without using their equity in their home, which is really common. I had lots of clients with, they felt pretty good about having a $400,000 or $500,000 account or IRA, but if you're used to making $120,000 a year and you're about to go on Social Security, $500,000, that's not a lot.
That's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, if it were sitting on the table, it would look like a lot of money, but it doesn't fund a lifestyle for very long without working. And so, and it was pretty easy. There were many instances as a financial advisor where I would be talking to clients and I would know, and I'd have to tell them, because I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't. I'd have to tell them, like, hey, we need to make some changes. You either need to cut back on your spending and save more, or plan to work longer, or some combination of the two, because the way things are sitting now, if you want to retire at 67, you're going to run out of money at 74.
Wow.
Right, or something like that, right?
Exactly.
That comes up a lot, because a lot of people are underfunded for retirement. And so, anyways, he writes this book and he says, if you have clients that are likely going to run out of money before they pass away, you're much better off implementing a reverse mortgage into the strategy before they need it, while they still have other assets, because it gives you a tremendous amount of flexibility on how things are taxed, when things are used, flexibility when the market is up or down. You can choose where you're going to get the money that you need to spend from. There's a thing that they call in that industry sequence of returns risk. Right? If I retired in 2007, I had a huge problem.
A year later,
as opposed to trying to retire in maybe 2015, where we were, or maybe 2012, where we were at the beginning of a bull run in the market. Right, that's just a different landscape, and it has nothing to do with choices. Maybe I needed to retire at 2007 because of a health issue or something like that. But they talk about when you experience certain kinds of returns, that can have a massive impact on the ability of your assets to provide for you in retirement. And so reverse mortgage is a great tool to combat the sequence of returns risk, which if you're in financial planning, you know this term. That's a common term, and there's other tools that they have as well. But a reverse mortgage is a great tool to offset sequence of returns risk, because if you want to pull money out of a retirement account and the market just got kicked in the crotch, pardon my language, like you've got this pool of cash that you're not being charged interest on it if it doesn't have a balance. It's just a line of credit, by the way. That's what reverse mortgages are. And if you open up this line of credit so that if you need money and you don't want to take it out of a portfolio for one reason or another, now it might be because the market is down, or it might be because you need a large sum. Maybe you need an expense in retirement that costs $100,000. Maybe it's medical, maybe it's an RV or something like that. If you try to take that out of your retirement account, an IRA, you're going to have to take out $150 just to pocket $100 because of the tax benefits, or the tax consequences, I should say. But if I take that money out of reverse mortgage and pay that reverse mortgage back with my IRA money distributions over the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, that can be tremendously helpful from a tax perspective. And so there's just way more applications to reverse mortgages than just, oh my gosh, I've run out of all my other assets. Thank goodness I have some equity in my home. I guess I better tap it through a reverse mortgage. It can work that way, right? It can help people who are in that position. But it just makes sense. I think of a reverse mortgage as a decision everybody should make conscientiously, right? It doesn't mean everybody needs one, but once you qualify for one, which basically means once you're 62 years old, you need to understand how it works so that you can make a decision whether it's right or wrong for you. But ignorance is a bad choice, right? Choosing not to look into it is a bad choice, because it can be worth millions of dollars to you if you project how time and money compound over time. The value of a reverse mortgage and how much it could save you in taxes, in access to certain living standards, to leaving, if you might need to lean on your children financially, it can save you from that. It has all sorts of implications that I think people just don't look deep enough into to see, but they're there and they're very real, and it's pretty incredible.
I love your passion, Brady. That's awesome, and it makes so much sense, because I've been preaching from the built rooftops for years about people making informed decisions. Make an informed decision about a reverse mortgage for your specific situation, not based on what Ramsey says or about what your retired plumber neighbor says about reverse mortgages. They don't know any more than you do. And unfortunately, even sometimes like with Dave Ramsey, you have these people you think they know all about finances and they're against reverse mortgages. Well, they don't fully understand it. He's got a big platform, and I don't think that he totally understands it. He just has a blanket view that debt is bad. Now, before I forget too, if you're listening to this and you are interested in that Wade Pfau book, it's called Reverse Mortgage, Reverse Mortgages. I think it's the 3rd edition. Yeah. I've got a few extras. Now, I think I have like 7 or 8 extra copies of that. If you're a nerd and you want to geek out on this stuff, because I read this book, and for me, somebody who's more personalized, I shouldn't, some more personable, I guess. I don't.
You wanted to say less nerdy, but you didn't want to offend me. But I don't take offense to that.
It was a challenge for me, and I was interested in the topic, very interested, obviously, in reverse mortgages. But because he uses so much detail and it is dense, it's a thin book. It's what, 150 pages maybe?
Yeah, it's not a big book, but it's pretty dense.
It is dense. So if you think that you would read this and get stuff out of it, give me a call or go online to my website at reversemortgageradio.net. You can download my consumer guide, which isn't quite as dense, but that'll give you an overview. But then you can also put in the comment section, I'm interested in the Wade Pfau book. Pfau is P-H-A-U.
Sorry, it's P-F.
P-F-A-U. Thank you. P-F-A-U. And Wade Pfau is his name. And I will gladly send you this book. Obviously, I'll need your address, and I prefer to talk to you beforehand. But what we'll do is we'll send you that book as long as I have them. If I run out, obviously, then I'll let you know and send you a link to Amazon or something. But it's a great book if you're that type of thing. You can also call me directly if you're interested in the book or just want to have a question about reverse mortgages. My number is 303-467-7821. My name is Bruce Simmons. I'm the reverse mortgage manager with American Liberty Mortgage in Denver, 303-467-7821. And I'm visiting with Brady Mullen here on Reverse Mortgage Radio. So I really am glad you're here today, Brady.
Thanks, Bruce.
Let's talk a little bit now about reverse for purchase, because that also can factor into your finances as well, into your financial planning. I know I'm not old enough to get a reverse mortgage yet. I'm not in a house that I want to stay in either. I know I'm going to be moving. But once I'm of age and I plan to move, I'm going to use a reverse for purchase. And I'm going to do something called overfunding, I think. That's the way I'm looking at it. So would you address the reverse mortgage for purchase program, why you think it's a good program, why you teach the continuing education for realtors about it, and just your thoughts on different financial implications of it?
Sure. So, we talked in the last week's episode about looking at the whole financial picture, which is a common mistake that people make, and it's always a mistake to make it. Mm-hmm. What I'm talking about is a lot of times people will look at, let's say, we'll get to purchasing in a minute, but let's just talk about the fundamentals of a reverse mortgage. If I get a reverse mortgage on my home, and let's say I run up a balance of $200,000, so I get a reverse mortgage. Maybe I use that $200,000 to pay off my current mortgage. I just didn't want to make payments anymore. I was trying to retire, and the payments were hard to make, so I got a reverse mortgage to replace my current mortgage, so I no longer had to make payments. Now, if I have a $200,000 reverse mortgage and I never make a payment, because you don't have to. I mean, you can, but you don't have to. Mm-hmm. If I have a $200,000 balance on a reverse mortgage, if that appreciates by 7.2%, that means it'll double every 10 years. That's the magic of the 72 number. That's, yep. I'm using that just because it's simple math. And it's not unreasonable. It could accumulate at that 7.2. So if that $200,000 accumulates by 7.2, then 10 years later, I'm going to owe $400,000. That's where people freak out.
Yeah.
And it's true, by the way.
Yep. You
have to come to terms with that. But here's where that is lacking. If I had the $200,000 to pay that off, Dave Ramsey would say, again, I don't have anything against Dave Ramsey. I think he does more good than harm. I think he's doing his best out there. But just a pure visceral reaction to debt at all times as a bad thing is a mistake.
Yeah.
We shouldn't deal with money in an emotional sense. We should run calculations and make choices that way. So if I have that if I had the $200,000 to pay off my mortgage instead of getting a reverse mortgage to pay off my mortgage, because if I don't want a payment on my home, then I've got two options. I can get a reverse mortgage, or I can take some other assets somewhere and pay it off. If I take the other assets to pay off that $200,000 mortgage, what do I not have anymore?
That $200,000.
That $200,000 invested. And if that $200,000 earns 7.2, which I think will generally do better than 7.2 over a 10-year period of time, I don't know that, but that's generally speaking a pretty doable thing. Then if that $200,000 was earning 7.2% for the next 10 years, it would be worth $400,000. So you can see how my balance sheet doesn't change depending on whether I use the reverse mortgage or my asset. What has changed is I have a lot more flexibility if I keep control of the asset. Now, this is not me saying that you should never use an asset to pay off a mortgage. You should use a reverse mortgage instead. I don't believe that. But if you're not looking at the whole picture, then you're making a mistake, because the whole picture is definitely involved, whether you want it to or not. Another reason why you might not want to use that $200,000 to pay off the mortgage is that might be in an IRA. So if you want $200,000 to pay off your mortgage out of your IRA, you're going to need $300,000, distribute $300,000, because that's going to create a 1099.
Yeah.
And that's going to look like $300,000 of income. So after you pay that $100,000 tax bill so that you have $200,000 left to pay off your mortgage, you just spent $300,000 of your assets. That's not tax efficient, whereas a reverse mortgage is significantly more tax efficient. And again, nobody listening to this show should hear this show and say, sign up. I'm going to sign the papers for a reverse mortgage. All I'm saying is that there's way more to it than what you're going to learn about on cultural references. Because I always reference the Family Guy, because I know they made some joke about somebody got a reverse mortgage, so their life is going to fall down the toilet or whatever. I don't know, but there's what do they know about it?
Exactly.
We hire them to tell us jokes, but there's just lots of bad information out there, and if you're not taking the whole picture into consideration, that's a mistake. So where does that leave us with purchasing a home? There's a lot of people, we see this a lot, where people move in their retirement years for a couple of reasons. Ones that are really common is people move to a place that's just more appropriate for them.
Yep.
Right? Maybe stairs, maybe just accommodations. Maybe they're tired of taking care of a big yard and they want something smaller. We see that a lot. Another reason people move all the time is they just want to be closer to family.
Yeah.
Right? We live in a very mobile society where you might live in Omaha and your kids are found a career that they love in Denver. Mm-hmm. And that's where your kids are and your grandkids are, and you don't like that. But it's pretty tough to move to Denver from Omaha with the price difference. Denver's more expensive. Omaha's getting more expensive too, but Denver's still more expensive. And so a lot of times that's why people move as well. Now with a reverse mortgage, what you're talking about we call it reverse for purchase in the industry, but what that means is a reverse mortgage doesn't have to just be a refinance. You can actually use a reverse mortgage to purchase a home just like any other mortgage.
Exactly.
The only difference is once you get that home, a traditional mortgage, you're going to have to make payments. A reverse mortgage, you can decide whether or not you want to make payments. So it really is a lot simpler than most people think. It's just using a reverse mortgage to purchase it. One thing people need to know is your loan to value in that situation is going to be relatively low. Reverse mortgages have a relatively low loan to value. It has to be that way, otherwise it's not sustainable. And so you're not going to be able to put 20% down and buy a house. It's going to be more like 50, 60, 70%, depending on your age, because it's age.
Exactly.
Yeah, It's determined by age and interest rates and things. But it's a very viable way. So if I sell a property in Wichita, Kansas for $500,000, that was probably the biggest house in Wichita, and I bring that money with me to Denver, it just doesn't buy much.
Yeah.
But it can buy plenty if I use a reverse mortgage to make up that difference, and then I still live in a home near my kids without any payments to be made.
Yeah, that's exactly the scenario that one of my clients moved from Lincoln, Nebraska, actually, and they were in their early 80s. They bought a home in Loveland, right near their daughter and son-in-law and their grandkids, but they had to spend $600,000, $620,000 on this home. They only had $400,000 from the sale of their home. We were able to get them allow them to get into that $600,000+ home, and they only put down like $380,000 on their house. So they put down $380,000. They got a $620,000 home, and they have no mortgage payment. And they were able to keep a little bit of money in their pocket from the sale of their old home. It worked out beautifully for them. They're incredibly happy. And it's those types of scenarios. I could think the very first reverse for purchase that I did, because this loan was not in existence before 2009.
For a purchase.
For a purchase,
Yeah.
yes. So a guy I met with the whole family. His wife had just passed away. He had like 3/4 of an acre of land on a huge ranch home in Lakewood. And at the time, this was in 2009, the house, even after the recession and everything, the house was probably worth around $400,000. He was able to buy a new studio,
Condo?
patio. It's like a patio home.
Okay.
Yeah, patio home in North Glen that had no yard work, and he had a mortgage on the other home too of about $150,000 that he was paying on that home in Lakewood. So he was able to pay off that mortgage, and at that time we would loan more money to people as a percentage of the value of the home. In 2009, FHA hadn't made all their changes over the years to reduce the amount of money that we can loan. But he was able to get in that new home. He kept something like $80,000 in his pocket, no mortgage payment, no yard work, and it worked out perfect for him in that situation. By the way, too, if you just tuned in, you are listening to Reverse Mortgage Radio. I'm your host, Bruce Simmons, and I work for American Liberty Mortgage in Denver. My number is 303-467-7821, 303-467-7821, or you can visit me online at reversemortgageradio.net. And we're lucky to have Brady joining us today. Brady Mullen, he works for American Liberty Mortgage, and he's a reformed financial advisor. That's one way to put it, right? Now, I think that the financial community probably has a different viewpoint of the mortgage loan officers than a little less.
Yeah, I'm always really, I sold my practice, I left the financial industry, but I don't believe that financial people do harm. Obviously some do. There's good and bad in that industry, but I'm proud of what I did with and for clients. I loved that, but I really wanted to implement real estate into that kind of the real estate choices that people make. I wanted to help them understand the consequences of those things, and I just couldn't do it while working in finance, oddly.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah. Now, you tell a story in your CE classes about an estate planning attorney who had a client. Can you? So this is for somebody that's well off. These people, somebody that's in very good financial position. So go ahead and tell that story, because it has an impact on people.
Yeah. So his and I have no problem saying his name because I love this guy. And if anybody out there needs an estate planning attorney, he's somebody that I trust wholeheartedly. He's who I use for my stuff, and I've referred many family and friends over to him. His name is Michael Muir, and he told me this story on how he thinks about reverse mortgages, and I love it. And this is while I was still in the finance industry, and I also thought well of reverse mortgages. I didn't know why the negative press. I thought they were an interesting tool, but he says this story, and he says, I've had this conversation with a couple dozen people, but I'm just going to create an avatar. It goes something like this: a lot of my clients are business owners, and they retire and they sell their practice. Maybe that happens in their mid-60s. So this is kind of the example that he tells. So he's talking to clients and he says, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I've worked with you for the past 15 years. I've helped you with legal things as you've needed them along the way. And ever since we met, you've been talking about buying this property in North Carolina where you could spend Christmases and Thanksgivings with your family. You want to add that element to your extended family, where it's like, what's the point of having wealth if you're not creating memories and enhancing your lives and the lives of your family members? What's stopping you? Why don't you do that? And they'll hem and they'll haw. And in this example, they're not like filthy wealthy people. They're just, maybe they're worth a couple of million, of maybe a few million. Maybe they had some convenience stores or something like that they sold, and they're doing well. They're more wealthy than the average citizen, but not filthy rich. Yeah. And they would say, well, what would we use to buy that property? We have this money set aside for income. We have this money set aside for reserves, for emergencies, this sort of thing. We're going to give this to grandkids for education, blah, blah, blah. What would we use to buy this? And he says, do you know how a reverse mortgage works? And they would say, well, we don't, reverse mortgages are for people who are broke. And he's like, no, you need to understand these. There's some huge benefits here. And he says, now imagine you're 65 years old. You're going to deteriorate. And estate planning attorneys are really good about having uncomfortable conversations because that's just what they do all the time, right? So he'll say, look, you're going to fall apart. You've probably already noticed it starts to happen when you're in your mid-30s, maybe 40. You notice, like, you start to decline, but you're 65 now. eventually, instead of bustling in the kitchen on Thanksgiving and Christmas, you're going to be on the couch and your kids are going to be putting blankets on you and the grandkids aren't going to hop up on your lap anymore with a book. Like that version of your life is going to end someday. Let's imagine that happens at age 80. It might be earlier, it might be later, but let's imagine that happens at 80. If you're 65 now and that happens at age 80, you've got 15 Christmases left, right? And wow, I mean, I've told that story literally 300 times, and I still get goosebumps when I talk about it, because this is where we were talking about in the last week's episode, how the numbers and graphs translate into people's quality of, it translates into lives.
Exactly.
Right? And so he says, look, if you take a reverse mortgage on your home that you own free and clear in this scenario, if you take a reverse mortgage on your home, pull some cash out, and use that to go buy a property in North Carolina, has your equity position changed? Have you lost any equity?
No.
The answer is no, right? You had, let's say your home was worth $800,000 and you took out $300,000 in a reverse mortgage and used that to buy $300,000 down on a property in North Carolina. You still have $800,000 of equity. In fact, you might even say that your equity position has improved because now it's in two markets instead of one, perhaps, right? But that's beside the point. So your equity position hasn't changed, but the amount that you took out on the reverse mortgage, if you don't make payments, that's going to grow, and that's the part that scares people. But going back to that whole picture, the money you put down on a property in North Carolina, that's also going to grow.
Yeah.
Right? And we're talking about a property, a beach house or something out there where when you're not there with family, rent it out to people. Get a property manager to have people in there when you're not there. That's actually good for the property anyway. It gets used, right? And properties thrive that way. So all you have to do is earn 7 or 8% on your investment there in real estate, and I could spend a long time talking about the returns in real estate. Like, that's pretty modest.
Yeah.
If you're getting between the income and the tax benefits and the appreciation and stuff like that, if you're getting just 7 or 8% on your return on your investment in that property, your balance sheet hasn't changed. You're getting equity in that property in North Carolina by virtue of it's an investment for you. Yes, you're spending time there with your family, but it's also providing some returns for you. Mm-hmm. Your balance sheet hasn't changed. Only now you have that property in your family, and it's been good for you financially. And so that's the story that he tells, because he's about, hey, yes, it's great to run finances, but if that doesn't translate into the life that you want, what's the point? And that's a good story to illustrate how a reverse mortgage can help people do that. If you have equity in your home, that's not bringing anybody any value. If you use that to go add security, add life, lifestyle enhancements, you can do that very easily, and it isn't bad on your balance sheet. It's a good thing financially.
Yeah, that's the thing people need to understand. It's just, you have to look at the whole picture. And that's why I really, really appreciate you being here, Brady. We're going to have you back sometime in the future. I appreciate you coming here 2 weeks in a row. Awesome. I love working with you. You've been listening to Reverse Mortgage Radio. My name is Bruce Simmons. I'm the Reverse Mortgage Manager for American Liberty Mortgage, and I'm lucky to work with Brady here at American Liberty Mortgage. Please feel free to call me. You can reach me with any questions about reverse mortgages at 303-467-7821. 303-467-7821, or visit me online at reversemortgageradio.net. reversemortgageradio.net. Please feel free to download my consumer guide or give me a call if you're interested in that Wade Pfau book as well. I'd love to get that off to you so you can enjoy it and learn something about reverse mortgages. The more people know about reverse mortgages, the better we are as an industry, I think, because knowledge is power in this respect, that you need to understand how it works. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Call Bruce Simmons today. Ask about his free Colorado Consumer Guide, 303-467-7821, or reversemortgageradio.net. Bruce will come to you anywhere across the Front Range to make sure you understand how reverse mortgages work. Regulated by DORA, NMLS number 409914. American Liberty Mortgage is an equal housing lender.